Welcome to another episode of Hoopla. It's your boy Rel. I am joined with a very special guest. I'm joined by Coach D. Thank you, Coach D, for coming through. How are you? How are you doing today?
I'm blessed. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing well. So I always like to start off the episodes with each guest sharing their journey, talking about like how you got into the profession that you're in now, what you do now, and anything along the way as far as like sports or what got you into the game of basketball.
Okay, dope. That's I don't know if we have time for that long story, but I will shorten it up. And so, my journey with basketball started at 9 years old. I remember watching the Knicks play the Bulls.
Okay.
At one of my mother at the time of her really really good friends. You know, in the hood, when your mom's got a really good friend, that's like her kids and cousins. And so I was at her house, at my auntie's house.
Mm.
I was watching that game, and I watched Starks dunk on Jordan.
Okay.
Get that?
The iconic picture of John Stark.
And so that was my start. What I do in basketball, my journey's been very interesting and very eclectic, to say the least. I've done it, pretty much done it all. At 17, I had my first knee surgery. I've two since my first one, and so that surgery took me away from basketball very early as a player. And so very determined, I continued to stay in basketball by way of sports-based youth development. So I became
So you said at 18?
19.
Oh, 19? Okay, nice. Wow.
Became coach. And so, I continued to coach and train and do different things. I was able to go to several camps, Syracuse, Providence, there's so many, Manhattan, John Jay Couch, Pro Camp, the list goes on. So I was able to kind of infiltrate it, if you will, because I'm not tall. At least by social standing.
Yeah.
Fine. But according to the rest of the world, I'm not I'm not tall. So for me, it was like, how can I make my mark on this game? And so I noticed very, very early on, just as an extension of my life and story, was that a lot of athletes weren't taking care of their bodies.
Yes.
They were on for 3 hours in the gym. But then they weren't stretching, they weren't recovering, they weren't restoring, they weren't sleeping. All the things that I was doing at 17, I noticed my athletes are doing now at 21 and 2. And so when I started coaching AAU basketball, I was coaching boys at a time where it wasn't really popular. And the only woman that really had any kind of notoriety was Coach Lovelace at Boys and Girls.
Yeah.
So I often would find myself going to her games or going to her clinics or just wanting to be in the same space with her. However, our journey is very different. Most people who are successful in the profession of basketball on a professional level in terms of like corporate or just any of the elite leagues like the NBA or FIBA, so on and so forth, they're usually former players or people played the game to a certain level or an extent.
Yeah.
After long, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to continue to follow her. She's not someone that I could continue to emulate and be seen as the same. You're not, right? And so that led me to other things in basketball aside from development. It was like, okay, how can I get my players to stretch and compete? And so I began, because as I said, I had 2 more knee surgeries after my first. At 26 years old, I began the practice of yoga at 7. I want to say 26, 27. And for me, it was a very interesting journey because I was doing it so I could get back to playing the game.
Yeah.
It was I get back to playing ball. And someone was like, oh, do yoga. And I was like, whatever. And I wound up coming across it so many times that I couldn't ignore it. I've always been very flexible. I've always cherished the ability to stretch. I stretch everywhere. Someone that is like myself, who has gone through multiple surgeries, recovery is super, super important. And so, for me, being young at 17, hearing I'd never play basketball again, and then hearing, well, you have a road to recovery, I began to take that on for
Mm.
my entire life. Like, it wasn't I had surgery, this is what I do. The things that I was doing after my surgery, I continued to do. And this is after my second and third, because my first, I was very naive. I was young. I just wanted to get back
Yeah.
into, you know what I mean? But then after the second and the third time, I said, wait, okay, this is the same leg, same issue. There's something I'm not learning here.
Yeah.
And so I was able to continue to develop that understanding purely for myself. And so I came up with 533 breath meditation for my mom. Most people don't know this about me, but my mother and my father passed away by the time I was 22.
Mm.
So after their death, as anyone would expect, I dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety. Unfortunately, the Black family, on a large scale, has a great, I don't know if it's a great one, but it's a grand reputation for just disconnection and dissolvement.
Mm.
And, we're talking about Black families that are from, we're not talking about the immigrated or the migrated
Yeah. From America. Yeah.
Black Americans, right?
Mm.
And I say that with such emphasis because I think now, because we go talk about the diaspora and Black being a monolith, those Black people get forgotten. And so the issues that they face also get forgotten. And so that's what I had in my family. Once my mother passed away, my father passed away, there's very little connection to. And so in the midst of that, in the middle of my 20s, I was on.
Mm.
So that played havoc on my mental well-being, to say the least. At the same time, I was out trying to coach people's kids.
Yeah.
And so, I had learned very quickly that I couldn't maintain it. I could not maintain Coach D and be Coach D without healing and learning and understanding, even acknowledging Dominique. For
Mm.
many years, a lot of people didn't even know my real name. And so fast forward, I started coaching at Columbia Prep. That's a predominantly white institution. I don't know if that helped on my mental well-being, but it was very necessary for my growth.
Mm.
And I think that because it's very intricate, going back to just the social, just the social attributes to how see themselves and feel about themselves. Being at Columbia Prep, it really propelled me to see, right? I'm not in the hood with people who look like me. I'm not, I'm not where things are familiar. I'm in a completely different world, essentially.
Yeah.
Even down to, when I first got there, I never wore my hat. Never wore my hat. I never stopped by cops on 92nd.
Yeah.
Real talk, and so after a while, I was like, wait, I'm going to be myself. And it was because of the additions of the 533 breath meditation and what would later be known as the Athlete Project. I was able to heal myself. I was able to create a mental hygiene regimen. What I learned through my own, just bouts with panic attacks and depression is that I get to be responsible for my feelings. I get to have my own interventions and be my own therapy, because the things that I felt like I was missing, I probably won't really receive the way that I have phrased it. And what I was really referring to, and what I felt I was missing back then so immense, even now sometimes to this day, is unconditional love.
Mm.
If you don't have someone in your circle, or if you yourself have never experienced the death of a parent, it's kind of hard to it's just not, you can empathize with it, but
Yeah.
there's very little connection to it.
Yeah.
So, for me, even now, I struggle with feeling alone, feeling like, damn, well, if my mother was here, my mother would think of me first, or my mother would think about me, or when I say blessings, my mother would say blessings back.
Mm.
It's so often I say blessings to people. You know this about me. I give blessings out like
Yeah.
very few people actually say it,
Mm.
or people will greet me because they know that that's how I greet. But for someone to just randomly send me blessings, that's not me. And
Mm.
so I had to learn very quickly, well, the life that I want or that I thought I should have is not one that I'm living in.
Mm.
And so I get to be present with that. So the Athlete Project was born. And I began to notice some things as I was healing myself and really just getting adamant in my practice. I was like, wow, a lot of basketball coaches are going through feeling pressure and feeling alone and not feeling the reciprocity of their effort.
Mm. That makes
And
sense. Yeah.
how can I support them? How can I, I've always been the coach where other coaches will come by and they see me work with the kid, or, I just have good energy, I've been told. And
Mm.
so, a lot of coaches in the past have always say, hey, D, how do you handle this? Or, I watched you move with that kid, or I love your energy. And so I really started to take hold of that. And I was like, when I for myself was looking for therapy, looking for interventions for my mental well-being, none of it looked like me. None of it felt comfortable. Even when I was going to yoga classes, it was a very short stint because I would go, I didn't feel like I could keep my hat on.
Yeah.
I had on basketball shorts and a t-shirt. So I
Mm.
like I felt hood. Like I felt like, excuse my French, but I felt like, well, I don't know if I should excuse it. I'm just gonna say I felt like a nigger in the room.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it didn't feel good. And I also, as an athlete, I felt unchallenged. I was bored.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I was like, I want to create a class, one that's not bogged down with white women or cisgendered black women, because that
Yeah.
was for me. I'm not
Mm.
cisgendered, and I'm not a heterosexual, feminine presenting woman. I'm an athlete, and so
Yeah.
even that space wasn't comfortable. I wanted to create where athletes could come, not only restore their minds and their bodies, but recover really and truly, not
Mm.
only because they want to get back to the game, but have an intention every day to be present, not only with their physical abilities, but also their mental well-being. And, I learned and through my studies and through the things that I was able to accomplish, like the 100 Coaches Certified, and now the Mental Health Awareness Training Petition, that one, a lot of athletes don't report, a lot of coaches don't report, a lot of black people don't report, a lot of men don't report, a lot of black women don't report. And I
Mm.
said, wow, when I looked at the stat, I was like, these numbers are skewed because it doesn't include a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And the numbers are already staggering. 25% of our population at some point in their lifetime will deal with a mental health issue or diagnosis. 41% are already diagnosed, but there's an overwhelming 18% who are undocumented, reported, underdiagnosed. So there are 18% of people that we know
Yeah.
that did not report. So when we look at the numbers of who is reporting, it's not us.
Yep.
And I understand that for as long as this country has been in inception, the black body has been criminalized, villainized, and hunted. The black mind has been exploited, has been used, and has been used not only for the benefit and the monetization of the country, but it's also been used to weaponize and gaslight the individual.
Yep.
So I was like, well, I'm not going to therapy. I'm not
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. That's a stigma. That's a stigma. Yeah.
While she sit and talk to me about nothing because she don't know my life.
Yeah. Can't relate.
Hypervigilance, for an athlete that, comes from the hood may be aggression.
Mm.
Where hypervigilant, where anxiety for a white girl coming from, Central Park West is extreme crying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And so, the Athlete Project was my way of not only finding my own lane, but giving this thing that I found that works away. And so right now that's the focus. I contract and I work with a lot of different organizations speaking engagements and or training, doing athletic yoga. I've created a yoga system and style, rather more so style than system,
Mm.
that really focuses on the athletic experience. So it's the same practices and poses and chants and mantras that you would do in a traditional yoga class. However, socially, the aesthetic, the cadence, it is designed for the athlete. And so, along with that, as I said earlier, the 533 breath meditation, I always have my hats on, which will be available soon.
So you got it.
Is really the meat and potatoes of what I do. Yes, I am a basketball coach. I coach athletics. I coach ball. I've coached boys. I've coached girls. I've coached community. I've coached at the high school level. I've trained at the college level. But the focus is all of them. It's every level. It's the guy. It's the guy, the girl like myself that's not going to make it.
Mm.
It's for the performer that's on the sideline. When the athletes do spectacular things, the coach is overlooked. But when we lose, the
You go
coach
to
is.
the coach first. Yeah.
There's always a performance in every sector of the game, and the goal is to really give everyone a piece of something they can do, not only collectively but also individually, to maintain their mental well-being. And so I've coined the phrase mental hygiene,
Mm.
because mental health is the state of, and that's why it gets missed a lot, because
Mm.
the state of is not something that we are at all relevant or even reactionary. It's something that we do when it happens, but
Yeah.
it's okay, right? And so hygiene is about the daily maintenance of the mind. So when we think mental health, we need mental health, we need access to. No, you need access to a system and a regimen that works for you.
Yeah.
Why the issue has been so broad and just made to be so complex, in my
Yeah.
opinion, when it doesn't need to be. And so, lastly, I'll say that the way that I've been able to kind of again infiltrate is the word that I've been using, because it is a very unorthodox idea. The goal is to make coaches be more accountable for who they are before they are coach.
Mm.
Who are you as a person? For me, I was Coach D. I'm very proud of that. I'm passionate in that
Mm.
identity. However, Coach D was very mentally tough, but Dominique was very mentally unhealthy,
Makes sense. Yeah.
because Coach D was a prolific person and people, loved her, and I hung on that. But after a while, I had no access to.
Mm.
Everyone needed Coach D, and everyone Coach D, Coach D, Coach D, but no one was giving to Dominique, including Dominique.
Mm.
And so the goal is to give athletes, coaches, performers, leaders a system that they can now maintain their own mental hygiene. We brush our teeth every day, right? Because we understand that there's not only an individual implication, but there's also a social one. If I'm
Yeah.
probably not going to want to talk because
Yeah.
I offend you,
Mm.
right? Or be embarrassed. Same
Yeah.
mind, right? Many are not aware of how their energy smells. They're
Yeah.
not aware of the taste of their own thoughts. And so they go out and they blame other things.
Yep.
Damn, train is late all the time. Da 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 da. Well, change your attitude. Maybe the train that you were supposed to be on, there's someone that is sick, or there's always a reason for something.
Yep.
And the way that we think about it perpetuates the result of that situation. And for a lot of athletes and coaches alike, they're hell bent on winning. Right? Winning is what propels you. It's what gets you seen. But unfortunately, I have a plethora of examples. The coach in Syracuse, um, Kevin Love, Jalen Brown,
Mm.
Delonte West, Simone Biles.
Mm.
I was like, the list continues to go on and on of high profile. So
Yep.
what that they're only a reflection of the masses. So if
Mm.
they're that, aren't we all?
Yep.
And so, the goal, as I said, is to give coaches, athletes, and performers this hygiene system of the Athlete Project TAP, which is 533 breath meditation, emotional intelligence. It's called the check-in. So that's a 4-part system where people can literally sit down with themselves, go through this system, and really come out with some viable answers for themselves. Now, this is not an easy, quick pill. This is
Yeah.
something that is a real process that is actually kind of painstaking.
Yeah.
To sit with oneself, be honest with oneself, and then make a decision that oneself has to live with and be accountable for. Most people aren't willing to go that route.
Yes.
The goal is to give them an alternative system. So then there is the joy intention, really having an intention to manufacture one's own joy. For me, I find that in yoga, and I find that in breathing. And so having people come up with movement where they can get up and move in such a way that they are creating their own joy, and
Mm.
that takes discipline, like learning the game. I
Yep.
want to I want to be able to cross over in the game. Well, you you got to go over there and
Yeah.
run.
You gotta do it. You gotta work on it every day.
Right, and so that's been the goal. It's creating something that emulates what they already do, and giving them another system for another part of their training.
Makes sense. Yeah. So I've known about this program. Well, all the platforms that you have, and for me, as like I've talked to you about this before. Like growing up playing basketball, you never thought of, as far as the yoga goes. Maybe in college we kind of talked about yoga a little bit, but we never really did like the proper even exercises. I mean, as a trainer, I actually was just talking to the last episode. I had one of not my teammate, but someone that went to college with us. So we had like the same coaches and stuff. And like we talked about, like, like I came into college, I wasn't prepared. Not only was I not flexible and all that, I didn't know how to do a basic squat. I didn't know how to do like the basics of just things that now were just second nature to me. But just coming into like that situation, I felt like I was behind because I didn't have anyone teaching us like the squats and all that type of stuff. And then from the mental mindset of everything, even to this day, I'm still learning. So it's like to expose players to that at an early age is amazing, because we need that. And it's the same thing with coaches too. Like we talked about, like I talked about in the last episode, our coach, like we had a lot of issues. Like my school had a lot of issues with our team. So like every year there was always something going on. Like, and we're all young men, 18 to 21 years old. We're trying to find ourselves. And at the same time, our coach is like pretty much like the father figure, whether he wanted to or not. Like if we had something to happen to us, our coach is getting that call at 10, 11 p.m. while he sleeps. So it's like, you never think of it. Obviously, we're younger, we're kids. So we're not thinking of it like, like, all right, that's just, we're just being young. But he has his own life, like not only he has his own family, he has his own, things going on. And then on top of that, he has to deal with everything that we bring on to him. And that really takes a toll on you mentally.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think, as coaches get to be more responsible. Back in the day, it was, I'm here for basketball and that's it. But that's
Mm.
not the world that we're living in. I hear a lot of coaches, especially men, push back on the I'm here to coach basketball, not deal with players and their feelings. But the thing is it's just like you said, like, let's be realistic. When players, if we're going into the hood and we're getting the best of the best, we also know that these kids come with other issues.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, you are that father figure, even if, that kid has a dynamic father in their life, while for any educator of any sector and any influencer or mentor, you have a responsibility, period. And if you're going to choose to coach, you're choosing to connect, period.
Yeah.
And so we understand that. One of my favorite quotes is attitude is a reflection of leadership. I come at coaches crazy. You already know.
Mm.
I feel like at the end of the day, whatever we're seeing in them is a reflection of us. And until we deal with it on our side, then there's nothing we can teach them that they're actually going, that we believe we are teaching them.
Mm.
Because my grandmama used to say, baby, kids don't listen to what you say. They pay attention to what you do.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? And so, for a lot of coaches, my passion And my gripe, really, just being honest, is with them, because I feel like as coaches, we get to step up and not put it on kids or parents or administration. We get to step up, because at the end of the day, when that kid is in trouble at 10, 11 o'clock at night, they're calling coach.
Yep.
Coach is that safe space, that trusted space, but that space where you're connected just enough, but detached just enough to where I can come in, I can express, and I can still be who I am.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so coaches have to be not only aware of that, but they have to accept that. Right. Like that's the nature of their job.
Yeah.
Go to Positive Coaching Alliance meetings and talk about filling emotional cups. And any coach that's a real coach has been to that meeting. And if you've done AAU, then you've definitely taken a PSA, a PCA, Alliance course. And so you know that as a coach, there is emotional building, the emotional maintenance, and there's a part of your job that requires some form of emotional intelligence. But see, coaches pride themselves on knowing their players on the court.
Yeah, for sure.
Many are very unaware of their players outside of them playing. And what I mean, yes, what are your players on the court? Yeah, now when he mad, he good. All right, but when he's mad at home, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Do you even know when he's mad? Or is he too afraid to show you that side of him because he thinks it's going to affect his playing time? Let's talk about it. You know what I mean? And so coaches are in a very intricate spot, the chosen ones, if you will.
Yeah.
Choosing this profession, or if it's chosen you, then you're also choosing what comes with it. And it is to be not only a guide and a piece that can scaffold game for them and life, but that mental piece. They watch you. They watch what you do. What does coach do when they're stressed?
Usually yell. Well,
Right.
I feel like
It could be yelling. It could be dismissive. Some coaches get scary. I've worked with coaches when they get upset, and I don't mean like angry upset, like just upset, whatever that is, be it anger or sadness, disappointment, they check out. I've watched coaches completely check out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I've watched coaches not be able to navigate their own emotions with their players in such a way that it now brings up the collective awareness of their emotions together. And that's the issue. For so long, we've kept emotions out of coaching, and we've taught to keep emotions out of the game, but that's a falsehood, because you play with your emotions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Player play with some passion, have some pride, and then in the same sentence tell them leave their emotions at the door.
Yeah, that's true.
Because now you're asking that human to be a robot.
Yeah.
And so, if you're training them to go play in metaverse, then sure.
Yeah.
But if you're training them to not only play the game at a high level, but to play for the rest of their lives, right? And just to segue, that also kind of really touches on how coaches are training their players. Are they training them for the next level, or are they training them for life?
Yeah.
There's a difference, and so, I think it's super, super important that coaches are more present and more aware, able to be more emotionally vulnerable, so that way they can increase the availability of them emotionally when their players need emotional building.
Makes sense. And I mean, as far as like the yoga aspect of it, I know you were saying that it started almost like as a recovery thing, but I mean, I know as far as like athletes, especially, I think more now, a lot of athletes are really understanding, especially at a younger age, that they need more than just the plyometrics and all that type of stuff. But when we grew up, or even 10 years ago, I feel like the change within the last like 5 years it's been pretty extreme, as far as the kids, or like the youth, just being a lot more aware of, I need more than just going to the park and then putting up 100 shots, or doing these certain moves, which I think when I was younger, we really didn't focus on. I mean, everything was all about, we had to do the skills things. We really kind of bypassed like the actual training part of basketball, as well as the mental part of basketball too, as well. And I think that, I do commend a lot of, just seeing a lot of the youth now. I do commend them for that, because you can see that they're trying to focus on these things at an earlier age than when we grew up, or even 20, 30 years, 30 years ago. So, I mean, what do you think is, how do you think that things have changed in the last like 10 years? Or do you think that things have changed as far as like the youth and how they see the game of basketball and so the ins
Well,
and outs of the game?
I mean, definitely, it goes back to, again, what they see. They emulate what they see. So if they see more adults, they see other people doing it, or they have coaches like me that's like, no, we're stretching before we do anything, right? Then it becomes a thing. And so it's just about visibility and access. I tell you now, in white schools, they were doing yoga 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we talk about sports, who is the face of sports? Black culture.
Yeah.
And so, the intricacies of that is one thing. But to answer your question very directly, 10 years ago, there was a push for, I would say more so 20 years ago, there was a push for athletes to do more than one sport.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And so as the professionalization of sport rose, before, sports was just about quality of life. Like, even in our social landscape, I saw a post the other day where it was a bunch of people on the beach. They were all fat. Like, all of them fat. And when I say fat, I don't mean like obese or if you got issues. No, I mean fat, like sloppy, like nasty, like clearly don't take care of yourself. Is a difference between being big or having a lot of girth or someone being naturally thick. No, I'm just talking about like out of shape, and it looked bad. Versus a pic 30 years ago where everyone was similarly slim. And so in our culture, the decline of being in shape has changed.
That I agree. Yes.
It was cool to be in shape 15 years ago. It is not. It's not a thing. It doesn't matter. It's like, oh, because there was the body shaming thing, but then there was also the monopolization and just the capitalization of exercise, which really turned people off, because then it became a thing of access again, where exercise became too expensive. So now you only had rich or white or affluent people working out because they had the money to buy a treadmill, or they had the money for X, Y, Z. I remember when I was a teenager, my mother was dealing with health issues because of her weight, and we bought a bike, but that didn't really understanding where the weight comes from. Is it mental? That's a thing too, where weight can be put on because it's psychological. Remember the movie, I forgot what it was, with Fat Bastard. He was like, I'm fat because I eat, and I eat because I'm fat. Like, that was fine, but it was very true. And so I think what has changed is just the visibility. People are seeing things not only a lot differently with just socially. I think kids are like waking up, but I would say our generation actually started this idea of like, F the system. It's like, what's going on in the system is wrong. Like, do what you want to do. So I think because of that influx of thinking, there was a great change. That's how entrepreneurship started with I would say, people who grew up, between about 20 years ago. If you were a teenager 20 years ago, you were a part of that change. You were a part of this idea that I could have a cell phone if I want, or I don't need one. Like, this idea of choice. We grew up in that. We grew up in, I don't got to be a basketball player to get out the hood like that. But in the 90s, that was the way. Like,
it was rap or
it wasn't even music. That's a common misconception. Music was not a way to get out the hood in the 90s, because those people who were the Jay-Z's, the Nas, they didn't really get paid off of rap until the
2000s.
You know what I mean? And so in the 90s, the way to get out of the hood then was drugs, prostitution, education, and sports. That was it. That was it. So early 2000s, we was like, we can do it different ways. I'm gonna be a hairstylist. I'm gonna be it. Like, we birthed the spirit of entrepreneurship, and I think because of that, we're now the teachers. Right? A lot of my friends are all teachers now, and so we're the ones telling the youth, like, I believe in it. Like, go to school, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. Like, we're the teachers telling our kids that, And so I think because of that, right? These kids have a broader view, and they have choice. They're aware that they have choices. Where when we were younger, those kids in the 90s, it was say no to drugs, go to school, or you'll be a hoodlum. Like, that was it. Now they know I got choices. I got the internet, I got stocks, I got trading, and so just the understanding that one has choices, then the view becomes bigger, the eyes become wider, and now I'm actually looking for things where before we weren't, um we weren't taught or told or even privy to the fact that there were other things to look for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I think if there's anything that's changed, it's that. It's that. I mean, there are a lot of athletes that don't know nothing about yoga, and there are plenty of athletes that do, and I think that will always be the case. We can't judge what is known just by the masses alone,
Yeah.
because there's a tribe and a kingdom for everything. Um,
Mhm.
Finding it. And I think now kids are more aware that they have the ability to be a part of so many different things.
Yeah, I know. I fully agree. Yeah, I think it's I even looking at now, I think there's more younger entrepreneurs now than, especially of color, than ever before. Like, and I mean, and I have friends too. That have programs where they have entrepreneurs, kids that are entrepreneurs at 16, 17, which is even now, even us growing up, even early 2000s, even that was very rare. Like to see like kids really looking into business at a teenage age, or even more than that, like yoga, things like that. I mean, I met teenagers that are trying to be personal trainers. Like that wasn't, like that was something that 20 years ago, if you did that, as like almost like, oh yeah, I failed type of thing, like, oh yeah, I couldn't go to school, so I'm gonna be a trainer type of thing. But the way that we look at it now is like, this is something that everyone needs. Like this is actually a job that, and it's something that people are really passionate about. So I think that, as far as like you said, I think that the early 2000s, especially like the last 20 years, I mean, a lot of people are just more aware, and that's helped a lot too. I mean, just going and seeing, like, working with like different kids, high school kids, and just seeing like the programs that they have, even though the programs have been taken away for the most part. I think the creativity of the people around them is really shown in how these kids are growing up. Because as far as basketball goes, I always like to tell people always think, basketball players, everybody thinks that they're going to the league, but that's not reality at all. And at the same time, even though people might think, like, basketball players, they're just jocks or whatever, they just go, at the same time, basketball or any sport, it allows, every year there's tens of thousands, I mean, there's hundreds and thousands of Black men and women that graduate from colleges every single year on scholarships, whether that's Division 1, Division 2, if you got grants, Division 3, if you in that, what I'm saying, like JUCO. So I think it does, a lot of people have a false stigma about the game of basketball, because I know ex-basketball players that become, lawyers and doctors and, politicians, community leaders. So it's like, it's a lot more to the game, I think, than, that's why I made this podcast, because I think it's a lot more to the game than just, oh, I want to get to the league, or I just want to play as much as I can. Because you can make money off the game of basketball without playing. Like everyone that I've had on here so far, they aren't playing now, but they still in the game, and they're still making their living from the game. And I think that that's important, that people see that, like, there's much more to the game than just playing it, and I wanted to have you on here because, I mean, obviously I know a little bit about your story and what you do, and I think that it's great to be able to get your voice out here, because we all have mental health or hygiene issues. I think we all do, whether we think we do or we don't. Like you said, I think some of it is a little bit of the culture that we live in, or like just being. I mean, obviously, I'm African American. Like my family has been here since before America was here. So like I've been here. So, and I understand exactly how it is when it comes to like how Black people think. We always, back in the 90s, if someone went to therapy, it was like, are you crazy? Like, like but now it's like, that's just something that I actually do need.
Right. I mean, yeah, I would definitely just reiterate, attitude is a reflection of leadership. It
Yeah.
is a leadership. And to help you phrase that, we all have a mind.
Mm.
right? You were struggling with like mental health, and that's the point, right? That's why it's phrased that way, and that's why the narrative is that way, because it feels so foreign, because it is,
Mm.
right? But we all have a mind. All of us have a mind and a brain, and we get to train both daily, right? If we
Mm.
all have a brain and we all have a mind, and we get to train both. And so, I believe that, again, it's not common. It's just not seen.
Mm.
Being a part of the queer community, therapy has always been a thing. However, the way that therapy has been expressed and participated in and even experienced is not what is on the TV screen.
Mm.
And, for Black people, however you identify, be it African American, Black American, or just Black, or Indigenous, I think it's about moving away from those identities.
Mm.
When we're talking about understanding mind, body, and spirit, we're talking about a human experience, right? My gums and teeth ain't no different than that white man, than that white girl, than you as a Black person who identifies as African American, and that Black person who identifies as Black, and that Black person who identifies as Nigerian, right? Like,
Mm.
none of that matters, right? When we're talking about the understanding of human need, human necessity, and humanity.
Mm.
So that's the goal. The goal is to continue the conversation, because just because you ain't seeing it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Mm.
And I think that has been changed or highlighted or challenged really for some people because of social media. I think that has very little to do with sports. Sports is packaged the way that it is because it's a business. And I think for far too long, too many people have forgotten
Yeah.
that sports that we see on TV, that's a business. But the ability to participate and experience the qualities that sports brings is a choice. It's a
Mm.
discipline, and it's an expression. Period. That can't be capitalized. That can't be monetized. That can't be ranked.
Mm.
Right? At 80 years old, there's a group of women. They have a league, 75 and up, in San Diego,
Yeah.
and they're a basketball league. And one of the women, I remember watching their documentary, and she said, "Yeah, we're here to have fun. We're here because we love this game, and we're here because we all enjoy just being here."
Mm.
Right? And when she said that, I didn't take her to mean being in the gym. I meant life. I think she meant life.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we get to not wait until life is presumably almost over to appreciate it, to be aware that, yeah, identity is important, but it's also necessary to not be to detach from it, because that blocks us to be able to connect,
Yep.
right? As beings, it blocks our ability to connect not only with each other, but most importantly with ourselves.
Yep.
If I'm so hung up on me being a coach, um, then everything I do is because I got to be the coach, even when people ain't looking for me to coach them.
Yeah.
That is unhealthy. That is imbalance. So when we talk about the mind, we are saying that we all need to train our minds. Very simple.
Yep.
Very simply, because we're in a space where there's an awareness of it. Consciousness requires action. And so we can no longer hang on the ideology that, oh, Black people, well, that shit is, and it's like, first of all, that's ignorant. Second of all, it's limiting. And third of all, it's actually not true or indicative of true Black culture, because
Mm.
as Black women are leading in guns and businesses, they're also leading in getting therapy, and they're also leading in being therapists.
Yeah.
Right? So we really have to be aware of that. When we talk about yoga, yoga is a practice that to this day, there's a controversy whether it started in India or Africa. That is innate, right? When we look at athletes, they are proficient in what? Movement.
Yep.
That's why they are so admired. Who is the greater of that? Black folk. So when Black people talk about things that aren't for them, that's more of a condition and a learned reaction than it is actually a truth of their own and our own nature as a people.
Mm.
Our nature as a people is to move, is to shout, is to dance in praise. That's why we are so good at sports, because it's a contained version of what we get to now just do.
Yeah.
So all that to say that I believe that again, we get to, if there's something you're not seeing, don't say it doesn't exist, or don't say because the people you've been around have that perspective. Don't put that on all of us, because I think for far too long people have done that. Where if you're saying we're not a monolith, then okay, then you also can't say that all Black people,
Yeah.
and so we get to grow in that space. It's challenging, right? Because we, as Black people, we have a lot of titles that we didn't want, and so imperative that we speak for every tribe, whether we're aware of that tribe or not. And that raises the vibration, the elevation, the visibility of the tribes that we think aren't around, that are thriving.
Makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, thank you again for joining me. I mean, I feel like your mission is something that everyone needs to hear. I mean, I always tell people about like the conversations we've had and all that stuff. Like, go to your page, because I do think that it's very important. And even, I mean, I've learned a lot from just the little conversations that we've had in the past. So I do thank you for coming on today. As we wrap up, though, I always like to ask this question. So as far as like the basketball things go, you actually kind of talked about in the beginning. So like, what made you a basketball fan? Well, you kind of already talked about it. What teams did you grow up watching? Which I think we probably know that. And what were your favorite players? What were your favorite players your favorite players growing up, and then your favorite players to watch now?
So Knicks fan, home team. I mean, I'm not a Knicks fan right now because I'm out here like a disgruntled ex-girlfriend who still be checking the social media.
They're actually good though now. I went through a phase where I hated the Knicks. I'm a Knicks fan too. I went through a phase where I hated the Knicks, but I'm actually liking what they're doing right now. Like,
yeah, I mean, I've never hated the Knicks. I hate James Dolan, but
yeah,
that's another day. Like I said, I'm, like, it's like when you have an ex and you love them and they love you, but you just be watching. Like, that's how I am with the Knicks right now. I just on social media, I check their highlights because they're not about to have me out here watching every game. Not about exposing my love and light for them to like. No, I'm not doing it. So, okay, no ma'am. So still a Knicks fan, always a Knicks fan. I loved two people, three people that I watched growing up. And here's an interesting story. I watched coaches growing up.
Okay.
I love Lenny Wilkins. I love Hubie Brown. I love Phil. I love Pat. I always, when I say Pat, I'm talking Summit. I watched and Pat Riley. I watched a lot of coaches, a lot of coaches. But players growing up was, of course, AI. AI gave me AI and Teresa Weatherspoon. They gave me visibility, right? I'm black and I'm brown skin. I had braids back then. I've always had, I don't know if you can see it. There we go. The guns.
Yeah.
I had this type of frame when I was younger. So the Weatherspoon, like just her being like, I was like, yeah, I get to be that.
Yeah.
And with the clothes and the braids, that was me. I had my kids. I wore my clothes baggy. I've always been masculine presenting. And so they gave me voice and they gave me visibility. Allen Iverson always loved hip hop, always talked about being himself. I watched him just being small and just having the biggest heart on the court. Like, you tell Allen Iverson he's 6 feet. Like, let alone 5'11" or 5'8", what his real height is. Like, he's looking at you like, nah, I'm dead 7 feet tall. You're buck. Like, attitude about him, bravado. To this day, like, you're like, yo, how tall are you, bro? I'm 6'3". Like, to this day, like, look, if they ever decide to make a statue of Coach D, if it's not 6'3", I'm haunting y'all. Okay, you know what I'm saying? And last and most certainly not least, Bruce Bowen.
Okay.
I'm a big I watched him. I watched the way he played defense. I watched the way he was just poised. He took such pride and had such a purpose on the defensive end that it made me fall in love with defense. And I gotta have an honorary mention, Gary Payton, the glove. His trash talk, his whole energy was like, again, gave me voice, gave me visibility. And again, he made defense fun.
Yes.
Bruce Bowen was the technical side for me, where I really watched him. Didn't like San Antonio because they beat my Knicks in '99. I mean, in 2000, another story. Yeah. But I watched him, and definitely, Gary was more about swag, but Bruce Bowen,
Yeah.
I really like. I was really one of the first coaches telling my players to do this. Like, I literally have had like refs say, "Oh, he can't do that." Yes, they can. It's
Yeah.
not at
Yeah.
all. Oh, but it's not illegal.
Yeah.
So if you decide to let that boy hit my boy, I'm stopping this game and I'm reporting you. Like, it was a thing, like, because no one was doing that. No
Yeah.
one watched him, but I watched Bruce Bowen when he played Kobe Bryant and shut Kobe down. You know why?
Yeah.
Every time he went to shoot, Kobe was looking at, you can't see me. So
Yeah.
I watched those. I watched them immensely. And I think your last question was, who am I watching now? LeBron. Definitely watch LeBron. I love his longevity. I love his just his he's another person, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that gives a different visibility to the game
Yeah.
that I know he won't be appreciated for until he stops playing.
Yeah.
Um, he's someone that's not afraid to be selfless. He's someone that's not afraid to be vulnerable. He's someone that's not afraid to advocate for himself, and he's someone that's not afraid to be himself. When LeBron came in the league, what made me watch him, the reason why I've never been a fan of Kobe is because Kobe came in the league saying, "I'm gonna be like Jordan."
Yeah.
Dub, watch you, like, I'll dub, like,
I've
I,
seen Jordan.
just me being from Brooklyn, like old Brooklyn. I'll say old Brooklyn. We
Yeah.
I respect, and I was taught to respect individuality. I don't care what you got. That's none of my business. But if who you are and you stepping correct and you stepping with light and you stepping with love, you got my respect all day. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's what LeBron did. When he came in the league, he wasn't the freshest. Even when he just came on the scene, he wasn't fresh at all. He was
Mhm.
about ball. He was who he was. He wasn't afraid to say where he was from. A lot of basketball players that are from humble beginnings, you don't see those beginnings. You
Yeah.
hear about them. But
Yeah.
LeBron, you coming to my hood, you want to meet me in Akron with my hair all crazy. I ain't probably ain't wash my face. Like, he
Yeah.
was himself. He was unapologetically himself. And I'll never forget the McDonald's All American interview where they asked him who he wanted to be like, and he was like, LeBron.
Yeah. Yeah.
LeBron. And they asked him again, "Oh, you don't want to be like Kobe, you want to be like Michael Jordan?" He was like, "Nah, LeBron."
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm flexing with him. I've been watching high school.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been watching. I mean, Bron is my favorite. He's my favorite athlete? I mean, basketball player of all time. So
Oh,
I've
wow.
been I've been following Bron. Yeah, his career since they've been since St. Mary's, pretty
Yep.
much. So.
Yep. And I mean, because when we were in high school, I believe we were in high school around the same year. If you were into basketball, you knew about LeBron James.
Yeah, you had to. You had to. I think he was. I mean, not I think. I know he was the start of the high school level of like the way high schools looked at now. I think that
Mhm.
really started with LeBron. Like, I mean, he was him and versus Melo. I'm pretty sure it was the first time that a high school game was on cable TV, like for everyone to watch. Like, besides like a McDonald's game or something like an actual high school game. So like I think he really started like this era of high school sports of where it is now. That's really started with like LeBron and Carmelo like that. They especially social media too, because that really was the real start of social media. Like back in high school, we used to get like the magazines with like we used to see LeBron. So I was in Sebastian was huge in Brooklyn back then too. So like those were for me, those are like the plays that really like that's when we really was focusing on basketball. So yeah, LeBron, I mean, his longevity is something like we've never seen besides, I mean, I've seen Tom Brady in football, but I mean, I wasn't alive for Kareem. So this is like no one's had a career this long besides Kareem, I would say, as far as being at this level for this long. I mean, he's in what year 18. He's still if he gets 20 points in the game, 20 point a game for the year, you're like, damn, he's declining. Like he still has years. He still has at least, I would say, another 3-4 years of still being really good. So, and I
Yeah,
think,
no,
and I think
I
like you, yeah, and I think like you said too is, I think a lot of people aren't going to really accept it until after because everything now is just all about comparing him to this person, comparing him to that person, all that, and it's like once he's gone, like once this era of players are gone, I think a lot of people are going to really recognize like he really
oh,
is
yeah.
like how great he was.
Yeah, I mean, how great he is. It's the human condition, right? Of memory, right? Because of memory, that's what intellect turns into. But to have intelligence, like that real, like just not even intelligence, more so a sense of knowing.
Yeah.
Right? LeBron knew. That's why he's not worried about it. That's why he's okay with giving up the last shot, because he understands that people are attached to their memories of Jordan, LeBron, even Magic or Kareem or Bill. And I think, he's okay with changing, changing the memory.
Yep.
And that's why, and again, most people are sheep. It is what it is. Most humans won't have the actual dexterity to say,
Yeah.
LeBron is great because he's different. LeBron is great because of da 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 da. Being able to compare greatness of itself and not compare it to something someone else thought was great. That's going to be the human conundrum for years. I mean, because we could also say Serena Williams is the best athlete of all time.
Yeah.
Right. Arguably she is, like, in terms of longevity, in terms of, like, she had a whole baby and then came back and won like 2-3 things.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
worlds, like, not even, you know what I mean? So, all of that is relative. Like, greatness is relative to who's proclaiming the thing to be great. But yeah, I think, because at one point in time, you're absolutely right. He changed the game, when Kevin Garnett came in the game, he changed the game too.
Yeah.
With, the high school, and what's the other one? Oh, I'm looking at him right now and I'm blanking. He played for the Clippers.
Darius
But he
Miles.
came.
Darius Miles.
Yes,
Oh,
Darius Miles.
Darius Miles.
Yes,
Yeah.
Darius. And his his ceiling was different, but because of other things, right? He wasn't able to reach the potential that was projected for him in the game, right? Who hasn't reached that potential for himself? But yeah, like, I think that you're absolutely right. Like, LeBron is again, he's lifted the veil.
Yeah.
He's lifted the.
And I think it's also, I mean, as far as like also being mentally, I think also just putting it out there, he was the one to say, like, like, I'm different, like, I'm going to be, same thing with Allen Iverson. He made sure everyone knew, like, I'm going to be this, and there's no say, whether or not, you just have to accept it. So it's like, I always loved, and I think that's why Allen Iverson has always been iconic, especially in the Black community, because he was just like, I don't care, I'm going to wear this, I'm going to say this, it doesn't really matter. But I also think that the mental part of it, of also being like the person that puts everything out there. So, like, I was watching like the Wu-Tang series, and they talked about, like, it was an episode when they were first starting to get big. Like, they lost all, like, they had no money, they didn't know what the next step was and all that, and they just asking RZA, like, do you think we're gonna be, do you think this is gonna happen? And then he's just sitting there, he's like, I know it's gonna happen. Like, we are gonna do this. Like, this is it. Like, there's no other option. Like, and I think when people have that mindset, no matter whether it's music or sports or business or whatever it is, I think when people have that mindset, it works more times than not. It works. I mean, might not work immediately, but it does work. And I always commend people that, like, have that mindset. Like, even like when we one of the first times we met, you just kept correcting me about, like, saying talking about, like, the mental, like, the project, and I just kept saying, like, projecting in the future, and you're like, no, I do this right now, like, I'm doing this now. And I think that I mean, I still remember that was like 2 years ago, and it's like, to me, that, like, that confidence and knowing that you are going to do it, this is you. I think that really projects, that's part of, like, the energy, and that's what people gravitate to, like you, or gravitate to a AI, or gravitate to a LeBron, because having that, or a RZA, because I mean, I'm watching, this was 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and something that's still connected to me. So I think that having that confidence and knowing that you are going to do something and you are yourself, I think that goes a long way. So, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a spiritual thing that I'll say, closing, that I wish that for everybody to have, but I also know that everyone won't have it, right? Yeah. To have that sense of knowing and sense of self-trust, because that's what confidence is, right? I appreciate you for reminding me of that. I do that a lot without memory of it. And the reason is because I have no intention of ever getting caught up or hung up on what I tell other people, because I've learned that when we as a people, and this speaks to mind state. When we work so hard to a thing, sometimes we miss it because it's not in the doing or the thought, it's just in the being of a thing. And that sense of knowing has nothing to do with anything academic or anything intellectual. It's void of memory. And that type of knowing is one of a spiritual kind. And so, what Riza was showing you was his spirit, not his brain, not his mind, but his being. And the biggest thing of what the Athlete Project teaches is an understanding that those two things are different. Who I am and who I get to be in this world is very different than who and what my spirit is.
Yeah.
And the goal is to get those things to be the same thing. When people can show you your spirit because you don't remember, then something, right? You ever met somebody that's like really they remember every little thing they did for somebody?
Yeah.
And that's an intellect, that's a memory, that's also a mindset where I'm aware of who I am. And the fallacy in that is you're aware of who you are outside of who you actually are. And so before we go, just want to put this out there in the camera right quick. The Mental Health Training Awareness Petition. This is the goal. The goal is to get coaches aware of their being, aware of who they are being, and aware of what their spirit is projecting versus the coach that they are projected to be. And I think, for us and even our conversations, I truly appreciate your time, your consideration, because we all need to be reminded of who we've been to other people so we can remind our spirits that they are doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. And so I greatly appreciate you for that. And I just trust that anything that I've said today can move somebody. If people are interested in connecting with me at Get Fit Fly Right, as you already know. But yeah, it's like, how can we as a collective move toward our being? We have examples, but we only look at them through a subjective lens. We look at LeBron and we say, oh, his mind is this, but it was more so his spirit.
Yeah.
That was something completely different. And we all have that. We all have a spirit that wants to shine, that wants to be bright, and that wants to come through and connect with other spirits.
All right. So thank you. Yes. So to wrap it up, where can people find you? I'm gonna actually post the link for the petition and everything in the page. So if you just let the people know, like, your social media and all that.
Awesome. So once again, thank you. If you're looking to tap in, you want to learn more about 533 breath meditation. If you want to learn more about the Mental Health Awareness Training Petition, or just the services that I offer, you can link me at www.getfitflyright.com. You can also hit me up on any social media at getfitflyright. You can also hashtag 533 meditation. You can also hashtag getfitflyright.
All right. And to wrap it up, you can find me at ITA Movement, itamovement.com. We have a lot of things coming in with the fitness classes. We also have the on-demand platform where you can find Coach D as well. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Hoopla. Stay tuned for more.